He's heading back to the ring. Say what? On February 20th for an exhibition match against YouTube personality Logan Paul. Now, Logan is the brother of Jake Paul, who most recently knocked out former NBA player Nate Robinson on the undercard of the Mike Tyson Roy Jones Jr. exhibition. Oh, Max, what is going on?
Well, Floyd Mayweather figured out a long time ago that the best thing a fighter can do for himself is flip the paradigm. What do I mean by that? For years, for really the history of boxing, the basic paradigm is this: fans and networks exploit fighters, right? We want to see them in great fights. What does that mean? It means we want to see them tested. What does that mean? It means we want to see them hit and hurt. And how do they respond? And can they dig deep and overcome and make great action fights, right? That's what we want to see. Floyd was like, well, actually, from the fighter's point of view, my best interest is take minimal risk, maximum reward, not get hit, get out with all my money and all my marbles, right? Like, that's in the fighter's best interest. Fighters' and fans' interest diametrically opposed. And so what Floyd figured out after a while, for example, with Pacquiao, Stephen A., is I don't have to fight this dude at the height of his powers. I can wait. Okay, I'll fight him now. Now there's pent-up demand. I'm going to make 5 times more than I would have made back then to fight a guy who's not as dangerous as he was back then. That's smart. And then what he realized is, wait a minute, because Conor McGregor's rise, I don't even have to fight fighters, boxers. I can fight dudes who don't box and make $100 million. Now, what fool wouldn't do that if he could? Why fight a guy who's trained his whole life to box you for $30 million when you can fight a guy who hasn't trained his whole life boxing for $100 million? Well, of course, Floyd's right about that, so that's what he did. And since then, he's realized, Stephen A., he never has to get in the ring with a dude who's trained his whole life to box, and he can make money. Whether it's a Japanese kickboxer, right, who's smaller than him, whether it's Logan Paul, who's a YouTube star who's twice his size, it doesn't matter. If you haven't trained in boxing your whole life, it's easy work for Floyd at any age, and he's going to make tens and tens of millions of dollars to do it.
Max Kellerman, here's where I disagree with you. I think he'd make that money if it was Jake Paul, because Jake Paul is the new sensation because of what he did to Nate Robinson. So, again, we're not talking about anybody. Much respect to the Pauls, because obviously they take this seriously. They're trying to do their old thing, but major props and nothing but respect to the both of them. But in terms of Jake Paul, because of what he did to Nate Robinson, the bottom line is he is the guy that is more popular right now, from my understanding. I could be wrong. I apologize if I am. But from my understanding, I think he's the guy that is more popular because of what he did to Nate, who Floyd knows, because Floyd knows a lot of these NBA players. A lot of these NBA players talk to Floyd. So seeing what happened to Nate Robinson was not a good thing, and Floyd was very encouraging on social media to Nate Robinson, giving him a lot of props for being brave enough to step in that squared circle, and I appreciate that from Floyd. But I'm just saying, when I think about Floyd, first of all, it's the wrong Paul. If he's going to fight either one of them, it's the wrong Paul that he's fighting, because Jake is the rage right now, as opposed to Logan, from my understanding. And then outside of that, me personally, if it's an exhibition, I would prefer to see them I'd rather see Floyd against Oscar De La Hoya. I'd rather see Floyd in a rematch against Conor McGregor. I'd rather see something like that rather than him fight a guy that just learning how to, and I'm not saying learn how, but please, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm in no way am I trying to be disrespectful to the Pauls, but I'm just saying in terms of their official boxing experience.
For guys who just started.
They're just starting. I'm like, no, if you Floyd, do an exhibition against someone. Like, I didn't like how Roy looked, okay? But Roy is a former world champion who had over 50 fights on his resume that decided to get into the ring with Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson didn't get in the ring with somebody that had one professional fight. And I don't understand that with Floyd. I don't understand that to me.
Logan Paul actually has more Twitter and Instagram followers than Jake Paul. They both have in the millions.
No, I'm just talking about right now, Matt.
Even bigger on social media.
Yeah, I'm just talking about because of Nate Robinson.
Sure, but maybe Floyd's looking at Jake like, maybe Floyd's looking at them like, Jake is going to be a little harder. Logan will be like, who knows? The point is, he is going to go make a big event and make many millions of dollars for boxing a guy who hasn't been boxing his whole life. He's figured that out. He could do that till he's 75 and make money every time. By the way, Mike and Roy just moved 1.4 million pay-per-views.
1.4 million.
That's more than like Triple G and Canelo. Fame sells.
We're going to talk. Yesterday, his head coach spoke to the media about Harden's absence from camp.
As far as timetable, there is no timetable as far as I know. And it is a setback. You know, you want your best player to be here, and there is a short window. Yeah, I have to be honest and understand that this is a setback, not having one of the best players in the NBA here.
Max, do you feel like this is all proof that Houston just needs to move Harden at this point?
Absolutely, yes. This is the leverage a superstar player has in the NBA. In the NBA, make no mistake, the superstars are in charge. Forget about the letter of the law. The superstars run the league. Guys, this is what the superstar can do on any NBA team. He can turn himself into a distressed asset. He can make it obvious that he doesn't want to be there. And let me tell you what happens to the team that has him. Like here, the star's interests and the team's interests are diametrically opposed. How so? The team wants to get as much as they can for the superstar if they have to move him. And they know they have to if he doesn't want to play there. But that's not in the superstar's best interest. You don't want to gut the place you're going to, right? So the superstar could be fine with a strategy of, look, I'm going to make it very obvious I'm not happy here. And what the rest of the league knows is they're going to have to trade him anyway. Not only that, but if he has a short list, particularly if it's a list of one, everyone knows they're going to have to trade him to that team. And so what does that mean? His trade value goes down. In other words, not in terms of how great a player he is, but what you're going to go get back goes down. So I know the team is thinking, we haven't heard an offer we like yet. We can wait till the trade deadline, get the best possible offer. But the best possible offer you can get then is probably not going to be as good if you have an unhappy star who doesn't want to be there and is making that clear. The whole league knows we don't have to trade as much for him, and it depresses the value of what they can get back, making it in the team's best interest to get the best deal they possibly can as quickly as they possibly can.
I disagree with you, Max. And here's why I disagree with you. Because James Harden, specifically according to the reports, said that he wants to go to one specific destination. Well, what you've done is you've hampered the team's ability to get equitable compensation in return for your services. And if you're Houston, you have no obligation to be complicit in that kind of maneuver. The fact of the matter is James Harden's getting about $41 million this year. He's going to be making like $44 million next year. Got a player option for $47 million after he took the money, he signed a contractual agreement. And that doesn't mean they shouldn't move him. I'm saying they should. But what I'm saying is you don't want to capitulate to that now, because what happens is everybody is going to try to get him on the cheap because they know how desperately he wants out. I am in total support of James Harden wanting out of Houston. I'm not in total support of how he is handling it. In a perfect world, I want Steven Silas to have James Harden, but I knew the minute that him and Russ couldn't coexist, even though I believe in John Wall and I think that John Wall's going to come back and wreak havoc, the fact of the matter is he's coming off that Achilles injury. And so we don't know what his health is going to be like. If you're wondering about Kevin Durant, Max, in terms of what Kevin Durant's going to be like, imagine what you could wonder about John Wall, because John Wall can't shoot like Kevin Durant. And so we've got that to be concerned about. And then you look at the powers in the West. Denver's gotten stronger. The Lakers are the champions. The Clippers are supposedly going to come back with a vengeance. You look at the Western Conference, the powers that be. Houston and Dallas's ascension with Luka and Porzingis once he gets healthy. Okay, now Houston is really, really dipped. So the window of championship opportunity is no longer there for James Harden. So absolutely, you move him, you trade him. But where he was not smart, in my estimation, is literally saying, it's Brooklyn that I want to go to. To me, it should be Brooklyn or it should be Philadelphia. Either or works. The way Kyrie looks right now, you might want it to be Philly instead of Brooklyn. But all I'm saying is you've got to give Houston options. And because he didn't do that, Max, apparently, reportedly, because I haven't spoken to James Harden, but because he did not do that, and he really pigeonholed them by saying Brooklyn, to now, and I believe that he was at the strip club on purpose. I don't think James Harden is a professional, man. He ain't doing something like that by accident. He did it to send the message he wants out. He did it so he would have an excuse not to show up the first day of training camp. But now that the cat's out the bag, it just illuminates the fact this brother desperately wants out of Houston. He wants out. He wants to be gone. And if that's the case, if you did it now, you're going to get him for cheap. If you're another team, in all likelihood. That's why if I'm Houston, I would wait a little while until I get the offer that I want for his services. I cannot lose James Harden for nothing. I got to get a big-time asset.
What makes you think you're going to get that offer?
Say what?
Look, I get the asset thing, but what makes you think you're going to get that offer? Unless the only way you can is if you really value certain teams' draft picks. They're not lottery protected.
Okay, so let's be specific.
Or they have extremely high draft picks. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Let's be specific. If it's Brooklyn, it should be Dinwiddie. It should be Karis LeVert. It should be numerous picks. If it's the Sixers, it should not be a deal that does not include Ben Simmons. Period.
Agreed. If I were the Rockets, I'd want to deal him to Philadelphia so I could get Ben Simmons. And I think Harden and Embiid would be a problem in the East. And then the Rockets would get back a genius, young, brilliant, 6'10", franchise centerpiece. Because otherwise you lose any deal you make. The question is, can the Brooklyn Nets, do they have enough assets to maneuver so they can get a piece that Houston wants? I'm just saying, Stephen A., the longer Houston waits, the worse the deal is going to get. It ain't going to get better. It's going to get worse. Because increasingly, the league is going to know that's a distressed asset. It's an unhappy star.
I think the sooner they make a move, the worse the deal would be. But I will say this. Because of Kyrie's position that we just talked about earlier, if I'm Houston, if I'm Brooklyn, it might be even more important than I get James Harden. Because guess what? You got to have something in that locker room to help KD. Because if KD's going to lose it if everybody comes to him asking him about Kyrie all the time. I'll tell you that right now. KD going to be ready to hit somebody. I'm telling you right now. He's going to lose it.
What about Kyrie
if everybody keep bugging him about Kyrie, he's going to lose it. But the person who would have done that was Kyrie.
All right. Max, interesting. We can't get into that. I heard that trade comment at the end. Harden has led the NBA in scoring the last 3 seasons. We might need to discuss that at a later date. When we come back here on First Take.